Hello and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. The U.S. sets a grim double record, registering more than 3,700 COVID-19 deaths and over 250,000 new cases overnight, while Brazil has surpassed 7 million infections with 70,000 more cases and 1,000 new deaths in a day. In Pakistan, 2,500 people have been infected and 71 died in the past 24 hours, with the death toll approaching 9,100. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 1.64 million lives and infected over 74 million people. A Sikh leader has committed suicide at one of the farmers' protest sites in Indian capital New Delhi. Police say in his suicide note, Baba Ram Singh wrote he was hurt to see the condition of the protesting farmers. Opposition parties said the farmers' death is the result of Modi government's cruelty towards them. Tens of thousands of farmers have been protesting for the last 22 days against the controversial laws they say favor big corporations. Turkey says it will not turn back on its purchase of Russian S-400 missile defense systems despite U.S. sanctions. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said Ankara will take reciprocal steps after evaluating the sanctions. Cavusoglu said Washington's decision is wrong legally and politically and an attack on Turkey's sovereign rights. In the U.S., at least 2 people have died as a powerful and complex winter storm is moving through the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Several were injured in a multi-vehicle pileup in Pennsylvania, while police in Virginia and Maryland responded to hundreds of crashes. About 36,000 homes and businesses were without power across Virginia. And Pakistan Cricket Board has announced its squad for T20 series against New Zealand. PCB says Shadab Khan will lead the team as Babar Azam has been ruled out for T20 series due to injury. The first T20 will be played at Auckland tomorrow. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for the news in more detail. The U.S. has set new daily records by reporting more than 3,700 COVID-19 deaths and 250,000 infections. Overall, there are 307,000 deaths and almost 17 million cases in the country, while Brazil has surpassed 7 million infections with 70,000 more cases and 1,000 new deaths in a day. Globally, the virus has claimed 1.6 million lives and infected 74 million people. More in the following report.
As announcements of coronavirus vaccine rollouts pour in, many nations face an unprecedented surge, dampening consumer optimism. Along with record single-day deaths and cases, the number of people in U.S. hospitals was at a high for the 11th day in a row. President-elect Joe Biden will get the vaccine as soon as next week, and Vice President Mike Pence will get it on Friday. With Brazil and Colombia reporting the highest number of cases, the Inter-American Development Bank has offered an additional $1 billion for Latin America and the Caribbean to acquire vaccines.
We have provided and reprogrammed $1 billion to ensure that we will immediately address the region's need for vaccines. We have already worked and asked 26 borrowing countries what their needs are, and there are 6 in particular if they need help with the acquisition of the vaccine and all the infrastructure for distribution, storage, etc.
Over in Europe, despite the curfews and lockdowns, record high deaths and new infections are once again ravaging Turkey. Germany and France say they will roll out the Pfizer vaccine in the last week of December if it is approved by the EU. The number of infections in the Netherlands jumped by more than 11,000 in 24 hours, hitting a new record. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says it will be inhumane to ban Christmas and defended the government's decision to ease curbs over the holidays. Meanwhile, New Zealand has announced it will offer free vaccine to all citizens by the middle of the next year.
Today it gives me great pleasure to announce that we've signed 2 further advance purchase agreements for COVID-19 vaccines that will ensure we have enough vaccines to cover the entire population of New Zealand and the Pacific, should they want them.
Australia is scrambling to trace the source of new COVID-19 cases after a cluster was detected in Sydney. Meanwhile, the WHO says China will welcome an international team of investigators in Wuhan, the known epicenter of the virus, in January. South Korea reported a record 22 deaths in a single day as the country's largest wave of infection strains hospitals.
And in Pakistan, 71 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to over 9,080. The Ministry of Health says 2,545 new infections were detected overnight. There are currently more than 42,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. Out of over 448,000 countrywide cases, more than 396,000 people have recovered. The ministry said over 199,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported nearly 129,000 cases so far. Now moving on to India, a Sikh leader has committed suicide at one of the farmers' protest sites in the Indian capital, New Delhi. Police say in his suicide note, Baba Ram Singh wrote he was hurt to see the condition of the protesting farmers. Opposition parties said the farmers' death is the result of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government's cruelty towards those people. Opposition leader Rahul Gandhi said Modi's administration should immediately repeal the laws. The reforms contained in 3 laws loosen rules around the sale, pricing and storage of farm produce, while farmers say that new rules threaten their livelihood. Several rounds of talks between farm union leaders and the government have failed. Tens of thousands of farmers have been protesting for the last 22 days against the controversial laws they say favor big corporations. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says the warring sides in Afghanistan should take steps to reduce violence, leading to a ceasefire. He was speaking to Afghan President Ashraf Ghani over the phone. Khan said Pakistan will continue to facilitate efforts for an Afghan-led political settlement. He welcomed recent developments in the peace process and termed the ongoing visit of a Taliban delegation to Pakistan an important step. Led by Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, the delegation met Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi in Islamabad. Speaking after the meeting, Qureshi said the next round of peace talks will be held on the 5th of January, for which the venue is yet to be decided. He added that the Taliban are fully inclined towards peace and all-out efforts are required from all sides to end the conflict. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has arrived in the United Arab Emirates on a 2-day trip. The Foreign Office said he will hold discussions with the Emirati leadership on regional and global issues. It said the Foreign Minister will also exchange views on bilateral cooperation, trade, and the welfare of the Pakistani diaspora. Qureshi will meet the Pakistani community and interact with media. The UAE is home to the second largest Pakistani community abroad. The two countries enjoy historic friendly relations rooted in shared history, common faith, and values. Now, China has slammed U.S. accusations over no-show at virtual senior-level meetings as irresponsible. In a press briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin also accused Washington of smearing Chinese companies. Wang was responding to U.S. warning to Pacific Island nations over security threats posed by Beijing's undersea internet cable. Earlier, the commander for U.S. Indo-Pacific Command termed the no-show another example of Beijing not honoring its commitments. In a statement, Admiral Phil Davidson said China was expected to participate in December 14th to 16th meetings focusing on maritime safety. U.S.-China bilateral ties have deteriorated over a host of issues, including Beijing's claims in the South China Sea. Moving on, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says he is certain that the incoming U.S. administration will return to its nuclear deal commitments. Rouhani said he has no doubt that 3 years' resistance of Iranian people in the face of crippling sanctions will pay off. He said Iran will certainly persuade the U.S. President-elect Joe Biden to remove Tehran from sanctions list. Earlier, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei warned Tehran against trusting Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump pulled out of the 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and 6 world powers in 2018 and imposed new sanctions. However, Biden's coming to power has raised the possibility that Washington may rejoin the agreement. And Turkey says it will not turn back on its purchase of Russian S-400 missile defense systems despite U.S. sanctions. In an interview, Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said Ankara will take reciprocal steps after evaluating the sanctions. Cavusoglu said Washington's decision is wrong legally and politically and an attack on Turkey's sovereign rights. He said the measures will have no impact on Ankara. Earlier, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the U.S. sanctions were a hostile attack on Turkey's sovereign rights and the defense industry. Washington slapped the sanctions on Turkey's Defense Industry Directorate, its chief, and 3 other employees. Moving on, the UN Security Council is planning to discuss Western Sahara after U.S. President Donald Trump recognized Morocco's sovereignty. At a news conference, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Kelly Craft, said Secretary General Antonio Guterres was notified of the proclamation. Diplomats say Germany has called for a closed-door Security Council meeting on the situation. The U.S. had supported a 1991 ceasefire between Morocco and the Algeria-backed Polisario Front. It is a breakaway movement that seeks to establish Western Sahara as an independent state. Earlier, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said a solution to the conflict was possible following Security Council resolutions. Trump accepted Morocco's rule in exchange for a normalization deal with Israel. Now, Nigerian authorities have entered into negotiations with the kidnappers for the release of school children kidnapped in the Katsina state. Governor Aminu Bello Busari said the state is using the local security outfit Makaba to ensure the release of the students. He said over 400 students are still missing after the attack on the school, contrary to the previous claims of around 300 missing students. The governor said the negotiations for the students' release will not include paying ransom money to the kidnappers. He added the government is regularly updating the parents on the kidnapped schoolboys' whereabouts. Earlier, the Nigerian security forces managed to rescue 17 students in an operation, but 2 students were killed during the operation. Iraq's federal police have destroyed 4 shelters belonging to the ISIS terrorist group in a rural area of Kirkuk city. The operations commander said large amounts of weapons and ammunition have been seized. He said the operation in the area is still continuing. Iraq's counterterrorism service has recently launched a multi-pronged anti-ISIS operation in the country backed by U.S. coalition forces. A French court has convicted 14 people in the 2015 Charlie Hebdo attacks. The court found the individuals guilty on various charges ranging from belonging to a criminal network to direct complicity in the attacks. The court announced 30 years jail term for Hayat Boumediene and Ali Riza Polat, who were judged to be the main culprits. It also dropped terrorist charges for 6 of the 11 defendants who were found guilty of lesser crimes. The January 2015 attacks on Charlie Hebdo magazine left 17 people dead. 11 defendants appeared in the court for the verdict, and the remaining 3 were tried in absentia. More news after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's move on to the United States, where the state of Texas, along with 9 other states, is suing Google for violating the antitrust law. The Texas lawsuit accuses the tech giant of illegally preserving its monopoly over the online advertising market. It criticizes Google's move to strike a deal with Facebook to manipulate online advertising auctions. In a separate antitrust lawsuit, online publishers claimed they lost revenue because of Google's dominance in online ads. They demand Google Google divest part of its ad business. With the latest legal complaint, Google is expected to face third antitrust lawsuit from over 30 attorney generals. Under pressure from regulators globally, the tech giant has rejected the claims, calling the lawsuit meritless. Also in the United States, at least 2 people have died as a powerful and complex winter storm is moving through the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. Several others were injured in a multi-vehicle pileup in central Pennsylvania. Police in Virginia and Maryland responded to hundreds of crashes, while residents in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia were asked to avoid travel as the storm moved in. About 36,000 homes and businesses were without power across Virginia. The storm is expected to bring heavy snow, strong winds, and possible coastal flooding into Thursday. The National Weather Service says winds could gust as high as 50 meters per hour in some areas. More than 30,000 tremors have rocked Antarctica since the end of August. The University of Chile says this spike in seismic activity intrigued researchers to study the remote snowbound continent. More in this report.
Incessant tremors that continue to rock the Antarctic region have become a matter of concern for researchers. Scientists say the small quakes, including a stronger one of magnitude 6, were detected in the Bransfield Strait, a 60-mile-wide ocean channel between the South Shetland Islands and the Antarctic Peninsula.
There are so many earthquakes occurring at once that we are identifying them with automatic pattern recognition systems. So we are recognizing only the biggest earthquakes, the most important ones. There may be many more. We have recorded more than 32,000 earthquakes so far between the end of August and the beginning of December.
According to the National Seismological Center, several tectonic plates and microplates meet near the strait, which leads to frequent rumbling, but the past 3 months have been unusual. The shakes have become so frequent that the strait itself is expanding much each year.
Around the end of August, with the GPS measurements that can be made on both sides, both in the South Shetland Islands and on the Antarctic Peninsula, this separation has increased to more than 15 centimeters per year. So from 8 millimeters to 15 centimeters is an increase of almost 20 times, and then indicating that there is a process that is happening right now.
The peninsula is one of the fastest warming places on Earth, and scientists are closely monitoring the changing climate's impact on its icebergs and glaciers.
A study has revealed that kangaroos are able to intentionally communicate with humans and ask for help. This report has more.
As if there wasn't already enough about kangaroos that fascinates, researchers have now revealed that the Aussie signature animal can communicate with humans. This research challenges the notion that only domesticated animals use their gaze to convey meaning.
Much to our surprise, they did show the gazing behavior and the gaze alternations that are usually associated with domestic animals. So it shows that this effect of trying to deliberately communicate with a human is not really restricted to the usual domestic species that we know. And it was fantastic to find that this actually occurs in kangaroos.
The study involved 11 kangaroos that lived in captivity but had not been tamed. 10 of them used their gaze to point at objects, while 9 gazed alternatively between humans and objects as if asking for help.
A year into the coronavirus epidemic, a Japanese retailer has come up with a new take on the theme of facial camouflage. He has made a hyper-realistic mask that models a stranger's features in 3 dimensions. More about the mask in this report.
With new masks setting records and trends amid the ongoing pandemic, a Japanese retailer is giving new vibes with hyper-realistic masks. Shuhei Okiwara's mask won't protect you or others against the virus, but they will lend you the exact appearance of an unidentified Japanese adult whose features have been printed onto them.
I own a mask shop, so I thought it would be fun selling and buying people's faces. That's why I do it.
The masks will go on sale early next year for $950 apiece at his Tokyo shop Kamenya Amode. Its products are popular as accessories for parties and theatrical performances. Okawara chose his model, whom he paid $387 from more than 100 applicants who sent him their photos when he launched the project in October. An artisan then reworked the winning image created on a 3D printer.
It's unbelievable, but so many people from around the world are asking me to buy their face. The number of people that want to buy these masks was more than expected too. I think the world is crazy and fun.
Okawara plans to gradually add new faces, including some from overseas, to the lineup.
Not all old things are out of date, for in Ukraine, a baker is carrying on a century-old style of decorating Christmas cookies. More in this report.
Would you eat this masterful cookie? Oksana Doroshenko is one of a few people who still practice a rare art native to her home village in Ukraine's central Poltava region. She decorates Christmas cookies inspired by Ukrainian folk art. Oksana's mother-in-law, Hanna Doroshenko, was a master baker and passed on the craft to her daughter-in-law.
It is our historic and cultural legacy, and I don't want this folk art to vanish and fade away in the crazy rhythm of modern life. I don't want it to die with our grannies. I want young people to practice this tradition and pass it on from generation to generation. I want young women to bake these traditional cookies for New Year and Christmas. Bake these cookies in the shape of horses and teach their children how to bake.
Traditionally, these cookies came in the shape of girls, horses, and roosters painted exclusively in pink and decorated with blue, white, yellow, sometimes green. Before store-bought baked goods became popular, they were shared as special gifts on special occasions.
And a 5,000-year-old Egyptian artifact missing for decades has been found in Scotland. It was dug up from a cigar box at the Scottish University of Aberdeen. A long-lost artifact from the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid in Giza was rediscovered in Aberdeen. The relic was dated to somewhere between 3,341 BC and 3,094 BC. The find fragments from cedarwood are thought to have been used in the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Records show that the artifact was donated to the university in 1946. However, the item was never classified and had been missing for more than 70 years, until its rediscovery by curatorial assistant Abir Aladani.
We looked at the old number that was attached to the box, and we looked at the entry that was there, and I immediately realized that this is something that has been lost for many years, and I was absolutely happy to see it, and I knew that this would be a really important object.
China's Chang'e 5 mission has returned from the moon with rocks and soil. A capsule carrying the materials landed at the designated site in Siziwang Banner of Inner Mongolia. More about the mission in this report.
China has become the third country to bring moon rocks back to Earth 40 years after the US and Soviet missions. The new lunar specimens gathered by China have successfully reached home. The material should provide fresh insight on the geology and early history of Earth's satellite. For China, the successful completion of Chang'e 5 venture will also be seen as another demonstration of the nation's increasing capability in space. Recovery teams were quick to move in on the returned capsule.
The aerial and ground teams have already arrived at the landing site, where the terrain is relatively flat. The crew are now carrying out inspection, troubleshooting and landing impact measurement. Later, the returner will be hoisted for transportation.
It was first spotted by helicopters using infrared cameras. Support staff following up in SUVs planted a Chinese flag in the snow-covered grassland next to the module. Its lander-ascender successfully landed on the near side of the moon on December 1st and collected samples from both the lunar surface and beneath.
We've just measured the shape of the crater that the returner landed on, which is part of the scientific data collection. Then the returner will be put on new warm coat to prevent the remaining propellant inside from being frozen during the transportation to the Zhuhai airport, where the propellant will be expelled from the returner.
Comprising a lander, an ascender, an orbiter, and a returner, the Chang'e 5 probe was launched on November 24.
And now moving on to business, the United States is eyeing a mini trade deal with the United Kingdom to reduce tariffs. In an interview, Trump's trade chief said he hoped for a deal to cut punitive tariffs on Scottish whiskey. Robert Lighthizer called on London to go further in breaking with the European Union's support of French plane maker Airbus. Diverging from EU trade policy, Britain said it will suspend retaliatory tariffs imposed on U.S. goods. Meanwhile, the two countries have signed an agreement on customs processes to ensure smooth trade flow. In a statement, British Treasury Minister Jessie Norman termed the agreement vital in ensuring continuity post-Brexit. And European stocks are trading higher following comments from the U.S. Federal Reserve that it will continue to support the economy. The Pan-European Stock 600 has edged up more than 0.5%. London's FTSE 100 advanced marginally, while Italy's FTSE MIB has added over 0.5%. Frankfurt's DAX has risen over 1%. The CAC 40 in Paris, too, has gained more than 0.5%. Earlier, most Asian bourses traded higher, rallying on Wall Street gains and hopes of a U.S. stimulus package. Moving on, Bitcoin has smashed through the $20,000 ceiling for the first time. Trading data shows a price rise of 9.5% and a peak of $21,298. The surge in price follows increased institutional and corporate interest. Bitcoin has gained 180% this year, buoyed by its potential for quick gains. Smaller coins, Ethereum and XRP, which often move in tandem with Bitcoin, gained 5.4% and 8.1%. With a limited emission, Bitcoin's popularity has skyrocketed in recent years. And in sports, Pakistan Cricket Board has announced a 15-member squad for T20 series against New Zealand. The first T20 will be played at Auckland tomorrow. PCB says Shadab Khan will lead the team as Babar Azam has been ruled out for T20 series due to injury. Senior players including Mohammad Hafiz, Sarfaraz Ahmed, Shaheen Shah Afridi and Wahab Riaz will also be playing. Skipper Shadab said a 17-member squad has been allowed due to the coronavirus pandemic. He added Musa Khan and Usman Qadir may be included if needed. Shadab Khan said it is an honor for him to lead the Pakistan team for the first time, adding he will definitely miss Azam. He stated Babar Azam's absence is the best opportunity for new players to showcase their talents. And Liverpool have beaten Tottenham Hotspur 2-1 in their Football English Premier League encounter. Roberto Firmino's last-minute header broke Tottenham's stubborn resistance at Anfield. The win moves the Reds to the top of the English League table with 28 points. In another match, Everton defeated Leicester City 2-1 to move to 5th place with 23 points. Richarlison and Mason Holgate scored 1 each for Everton. Meanwhile, Leeds United struck 3 times in last 11 minutes to thrash Newcastle United 5-2. Late goals from Stuart Dallas, John Elioski and Jack Harrison sealed Leeds' win, moving them to 13th spot. In another league match, Arsenal and Southampton drew 1-1. And now it's time to take a look at the latest weather updates from around the world. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.